Welcome back to the program. Throughout all these years of doing this show, the number one gift that I could give to all of my audience members is to make them all skeptics. Because if you're all skeptics, then you're not going to fall for the deception and the garbage and the lies. And that is my greatest gift to all. And what have we been talking about since this whole entire pandemic started? The first thing I did was call it a pandemic. The second thing I did when they did the lockdowns is I said, oh, I can already see what's happening here. They're going to use the lockdowns to help steal the election. And the next thing you know, it's going to be mail-in votes, mail-in ballots all over the place. We know what happened. I don't have to rehash it all, but we know what happened. I lost it all based on that and some other things. And the bottom line is, I told anyone who would listen, anyone, didn't matter who it was, please, whatever you do, do not take these unproven, government-mandated death shots. And of course, I was ridiculed. I was called a conspiracy theorist. I was called every single name you could ever imagine under the sun, right? But the bottom line is I was correct. And so many of you throughout the years have sent me emails and letters saying, Josh, I was about to take the shot, but I saw your broadcast on X or whatever you're talking about, and you said don't do it. So I listened to you, and I'm so thankful because I'm still here today. And you know what? I may have saved hundreds, if not thousands of lives, and I hope to God that that is the case. But the bottom line is, you've all been lied to, and we've been exposing it as the lies have been coming out. You see, the media has always been years behind. But we've been doing it on a daily basis. Every single new event that would happen, I would come out, and I would say, here's where it's bullshit. Here's the lies. Here's the deception. Here's what they're trying to say. Here's what they really mean. I built a reputation and a career on all of that, which is why I'm still here after all the crap that I've had to deal with. Well, now there's proof that not only were you right and I right, but so many other people, and I'll give them credit too, all the skeptics, all the vaccine skeptics, all the anti-establishment doctors out there from the front lines, many of them we know, Dr. Robert Malone, Dr. Pierre Corey, the late Dr. Zelenko, may he rest in peace. What a wonderful human being he was. His protocol is still being used today. Pushing of ivermectin, pushing of hydroxychloroquine. But we went a step further. We talked about mouthwashes, you may remember. I told you that there's an ingredient in certain mouthwashes that is a natural antiviral. I also told you about lactoferrin, which is found in milk. You could take a tall glass of milk, you could take lactoferrin tablets, but milk works better, and you could take a Benadryl, and you could go to bed, and those two ingredients together react in a way in which it becomes an antiviral. We could also talk about baking soda peroxide, and I can't remember what the other ingredient was, but there was another ingredient that you could put in one of those lung aerators that you breathe in, and that would cure COVID. Well, there was also another one back in the day where I said there's actual nasal sprays that you can buy over the counter that will kill any of these viruses. As a matter of fact, the one that I recommended was all natural without any chemicals in it. It was called X Clear. You could still take it to this day. Well, here it is. After Big Pharma spent trillions, not millions or billions, trillions. Understand, at one point during the whole pandemic, they were making $1 billion a second. Not a day, not a week, not a month, a second. There were times, a very brief amount of time, but it was about a 3.5 month period in 2021, I believe, early 2021, where they literally were making $1 billion a second. So they had made trillions of dollars, all for profit, not for science, not for your health, not for your well-being, and they got away, at least so far, with killing over 8 million of the world's citizens, including 1 million Americans. And they have still never been held accountable. But that's not what this story is about. Hopefully they will be. After Big Pharma made billions, trillions of dollars pushing the experimental jab, scientists now admit, again, they admit, that cheap, over-the-counter nasal sprays block the COVID infection in new, peer-reviewed study. For years, Americans were told that their only hope was to roll up those sleeves, be brave, and let that government jab that jab right into your arm and hope for the best. Well, maybe you know, when you get a vaccine, it means I'm vaccinated against getting COVID or getting sick, right? That's the whole purpose of a vaccine. You take a vaccine so that you don't have to take another one. But that's not how it worked, because they didn't know what the hell they were doing. As one of the people from the World Economic Forum said, they were, quote, flying the plane as they were building it. Well, you were the guinea pigs. You were the experiments. You were the cash cows. Okay? Trillions of dollars flowed into their coffers while dissenting doctors were silenced, families were divided, and countless workers lost their jobs under these vaccine mandates. However, a peer-reviewed study out of Germany now shows that a cheap, decades-old nasal spray, I wouldn't recommend this one because it is Big Pharma, but it's called, it has azalastine in it, AZELASTINE, may do what the so-called miracle experimental COVID jabs could never accomplish: stop infections. According to new findings published in JAMA International Medicine, all it may have taken to block the infections was a $10 bottle of over-the-counter nasal spray used for seasonal allergies. Researchers at Saarland University Hospital in Germany ran a phase 2 double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trial of 450 healthy adults between March of 2023 and July of 2024. Participants were randomly divided into two groups. 227 volunteers received azalastine nasal spray, a common antihistamine used for allergies, 3 times a day. The others, 223 volunteers, got a placebo spray. So in other words, no drug, nothing in it, okay? All participants were tested for COVID twice per week for nearly 2 months. The difference was undeniable. Infections in the placebo group, 15 out of 223, so 6.7%, caught COVID. However, infections in the azalastine group, if I'm pronouncing that right, only 5 out of 227 people, or 2.2%, were infected. That's a 67% reduction in risk of infection. The odds ratios came out to 0.31, which is 95%, meaning that the nasal spray cut the likelihood of catching the COVID virus by more than 2/3, which was statistically significant. Not only were fewer people infected, but those who did get sick had longer protection before infection, 31 days on average versus 19 days in the placebo group, and shorter illness duration when measured by rapid tests, 3.4 days versus 5.1 days. The spray didn't just block COVID, it also cut symptomatic SARS-CoV-2 infections from 6.3% down to 1.8%. It reduced rhinovirus, common cold, infections from 6.3% down to 1.7%. It slashed the overall number of PCR confirmed infections, COVID plus other respiratory viruses, from 22% down to 9.3% with the azalastine. Compare that to the COVID shots, expensive, rushed, mandated, and now known to have diminishing efficacy against new variants and side effects. The vaccines were pitched as our only salvation, but couldn't stop the infection or the transmission. Yet a cheap, generic nasal spray, already FDA approved for allergies, outperformed them in head-to-head prevention trials, and it came with very minimal side effects. Most complaints were a mild bitter taste, possible nosebleeds, or a little bit of drowsiness. No serious adverse events were linked to the spray. Now, you may remember a couple of months ago, probably about a month or two ago, I did a report that actually showed another study that said that you had 5,400 people per one, 5,004, I'm going by memory, 5,400 injections, jabs, to save one life. You remember that show? 5,400 for one life saved? Well, think about how many people were injured by these shots. Did they care? Did the CDC care? Did the FDA care? Did AstraZeneca care? Did Moderna care? Did Johnson & Johnson care? Did Pfizer care? Did any of these companies care? No. It was all about this. It was profit over people. That's what it was. And they didn't care because they made so much fucking money. It was ridiculous. And that was it. Emergency use authorization. Let's get these COVID shots in. Hell, even President Trump talking about Operation Warp Speed. I mean, standing behind it. Back then, we were also talking about how we were totally against President Trump's Operation Warp Speed, but they kept pushing it, and they kept pushing it. And they developed an entire, left-leaning broadcasting system that was not only pushing it, they were dancing on television. You had athletes rolling up their sleeves. You had the auto pen, the fake Biden administration with their fake White House setup, getting fake shots because they weren't giving him real shots, right? Of course not. He would have been dead already. And all of these things were done in the face of America and the world. But more importantly, they were lying as they were doing it. They knew that this shit was deadly. They knew that it was dangerous. They knew that it caused, adverse conditions that were serious. Myocarditis, pericarditis, advanced cancers, strokes out of nowhere, young people dropping dead while playing sports. I mean, how many people did we see? This person died, that person died. This person was on X saying everyone that doesn't get the shot is a Nazi and they should get the shot. A week later, they're dead. I mean, it was like, you saw, we lived through this whole thing. And the sad reality is that everything that I said was not only accurate and true, but it was silenced. It was censored. It was banned. And not just me, a lot of these doctors, these were professionals. These were people that actually did trust the science, the real science, not the bullshit coming out from the satanic garden gnome, Dr. Falsey, or anyone else. They were for real. And now we find out that not only were we right, not only did all the different remedies, the natural remedies, the naturopathic remedies, the holistic remedies, all the different things, including ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine that I was pushing. You remember when I had COVID and I did it, locked in my bedroom because I couldn't leave the rest of the house for 13 days. I was isolating myself. I did shows on it. Newsweek was writing articles. I hope he dies. You remember? I remember it. Trust me. I remember it all. I remember being put into scientific articles calling me the American Contagion, I think it was. And then a picture of David Duke and the Ayatollah and then Josh Bernstein in the same article. I was ridiculed. I was destroyed. And not just me. Many, many other people, much more powerful, much more wealthier, much more well-known than me, got the same treatment. But we stuck to our guns. We told the truth. We gave you the alternative media, and we stuck by it. And guess what? In the end, we saved lives, number one. And number two, hopefully, when these people eventually either meet their maker or they are held accountable, which I hope comes first, we'll all be vindicated. Okay, so you've heard me say Sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, right? Well, when the Mamdani, the commie from Uganda, ended up winning the New York City primary, Democrat primary mayoral race, at that point, that was on June 24th. 3 days later, I put out an article, and in that article, that's what I titled it, number one. But number two, I said at that point that not only is he beatable, but his numbers are going to go down. And if we play this smart, we can beat him. And we can beat him solidly in New York. But we have to be smart about it. This is exactly what I wrote. I was playing with the dogs. I got hair all over me. Here's what I wrote. Sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil that you don't. Could it have been that New Yorkers were a victim of their own circumstances? Here's what I mean. New Yorkers lived through the devastation of the lockdowns, the mask mandates, and the forced vaccinations. Not to mention, many of them witnessed their loved ones dying in nursing homes they couldn't free them from. Couple that with the groping scandal of Cuomo, and you can see why New Yorkers rejected the former mayor. Instead, they voted for a devout communist. And this guy is a devout communist. He wants to turn every single criminal loose onto the streets. He wants to empty out all of the jails, defund the New York City Police Department, and have open hunting season on the Jews. This is what I wrote. When Zoran Mamdani says that he, quote, wants to globalize the Intifada, he literally means a worldwide holy war against the Jewish people. This batshit crazy Nepo baby was educated here in our country, where Marxist New York City school teachers taught him that socialism was good and capitalism was bad. Mamdani ran on victimization, class warfare, false promises, unrealistic policies, and he did it all with a smile on his face. He reminds me of every single charismatic communist leader and radical revolutionary throughout history. Fidel Castro, Adolf Hitler, Hugo Chavez, Nicolas Maduro, so many others. America has fought 2 world wars against the types of Zoran Mamdanis in the world. Yet upper middle class, snobby, elite white women bought his bullshit hook, line, and stinker. But sometimes, as they say, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Make no mistake, Zoran the Destroyer is charismatic, well-spoken, has a certain clean-cut look about him, and carries himself quite well. All the necessary calling cards and attributes needed to be a successful politician and an even better radical communist. This is what makes him so dangerous. His policies are not just left-leaning, they are so extreme that I'm surprised that he doesn't walk in circles, because he never goes to the right. Mamdani should be running in Cuba or in Venezuela, not in New York City. But here's the good news. He can be beat, and he will be beat as long as we are focused like a laser on defeating him. You might be asking yourself, why do I even care, Josh? I don't live in New York. What do I care what happens in New York? Well, you should care, and here's why. Because if Mamdani wins, it will embolden the radical left to run even more crazy left-leaning communist candidates like Mamdani, or even worse, and in other cities, and maybe even in your state. Now, let's stop right there for 1 second. Did we not just see Captain Phillips from the Tom Hanks movie now running in Little Mogadishu in Minnesota for the mayorship of Minneapolis or whatever? I think he's running for city. I don't know what he's running. It doesn't matter what he's running for. The bottom line is he's running. And why is he running? Because Mamdani won the New York Democrat primary, which did what? It emboldened him. Exactly as I predicted. Now, granted, I predicted that would happen if he actually won the mayorship, but it actually happened even sooner. It happened from him winning the primary. Okay? So keep in mind. We have to defeat him in New York so that another doesn't run in Los Angeles, Portland, Detroit, etc. We have 5 months. Again, this was a long time ago. 5 months is when I wrote this 5 months ago. We had 5 months to expose how his radical policies, actually it was 2 months, but the primary is in November, so that's where the 5 months comes from. We have 5 months to expose how his radical policies will make New Yorkers poorer and the city even more unlivable than it already is. In the process, we need alternative media to help drive up his negatives and peel away his support, especially from women. I doubt his ceiling is any higher than what it is right now, and that's why I feel he is beatable. Well, guess what? I was right, because the polling is now showing that he is sinking. He is going down. But with these white, elite, snobbish white women out there that are stuck on stupid, well, they're going to continue to vote for him because they're stupid. As a lifelong conservative, I am no fan of Eric Adams. Now, the only part that I got wrong, which I will admit, is if you exchange Eric Adams for Cuomo, for Andrew Cuomo, okay? I was on the other end of that where I said Eric Adams would be the one and Cuomo out of the race. So I will admit that I got that part wrong, but listen to the rest of this. So as instead, just where was that? Eric Adams. But if I was in New York, I would vote for him in an instant just to block this jihadist anti-Semite from winning. In the primary, Mamdani only received 43% of the vote. Andrew Cuomo received 36% of the vote. Brad Lander received 11% of the vote. And Adrian Adams, no relation to Eric Adams, received 4% of the vote. Now remember, at that time, Eric Adams was not a candidate, okay? He was not a candidate. Current mayor, Eric Adams, just declared today, this was written on June 27th, and is now running as an independent, and there lies what I thought would be our chance to block Zoran the Destroyer. Remember, if the Democratic primary was between just Andrew Cuomo and Zoran Mamdani, Cuomo would have very likely won the primary, which is true. But they had, of course, this other guy in there, and they had 2 other people in there, and he got 36%, and this guy only got 43%. So if you take that out, which I'm going to explain, so as long as no Republican joins this race, sadly, we have Curtis Sliwa, who has joined the race, which would assure Mamdani would win and doesn't split the vote, Adams can win. Remember, Adams just joined, so understand where I'm coming from here. Just joined this race. If you take the 36 from Cuomo and the 11% from Lander and the 4% from the other Adams, that's 51% to what's his name's 43%. Assuming Mamdani's ceiling is in a low 40s, and trust me, it is. It will be in the 30s very soon. Last I checked, he was at 38.9% or something like that. Adams can win this race. If millions of Republicans and independents in New York City's all 5 boroughs hold their nose and vote in huge numbers for Eric Adams, he can win this race. Okay, flip out Eric Adams and put in Andrew Cuomo instead. And I was 100% accurate. Every patriot on social media must work diligently around the clock to do deep dive opposition research on Mamdani, myself included, which I already did. I explained where he came from Uganda. I explained Idi Amin. I explained his history. I explained the movie Mississippi Masala. So I've done what I could do. They need to look into everything, look into all of his associates, be brave, be determined, get to work. Otherwise, New York will look like Londonistan in very short order. Now, the reason I told you and brought all that out is because Trump and the administration today have said that they are considering offering New York City Mayor Eric Adams a spot in the administration as well as Curtis Sliwa in order to get people to vote for Andrew Cuomo. I'd rather have a grandma killer that likes to grope women than a Jew killer. Okay, I've said that before. I'll say that again. And here it is. I was correct. Sources close to President Donald Trump say that his advisors are floating the idea of offering New York City Mayor Eric Adams a plum position within the Trump administration if the embattled mayor agrees to bow out of the upcoming re-election race. As Mayor Adams flounders in the polls, hovering somewhere around 9%, trailing well behind Democratic frontrunner Mamdani at 42%, so there's a 42% poll, which again is still lower than where I said his ceiling was. I did see another one at 39%, so who knows. And then Andrew Cuomo established in second at 26%. Trump allies are reportedly angling for a campaign shakeup. Sources say the purported strategy is to clear the field, allow Cuomo to consolidate non-Mamdani votes, and regain traction. A New York Post report reveals that top White House officials are in talks over a potential job for him. I don't know why they always repeat this stuff, including a job as an appointment to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, working under Secretary Turner. So let's see. On Wednesday, New York Times. All right, so this is repeating. Okay, Politico also followed up with its own reporting, saying that Adams has been offered a high-ranking job in the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, per a source, and they are also talking to the Sliwa campaign. And as I said on X earlier today, I don't care if they offer Adams, the head of groundskeeping, and Curtis Sliwa, in charge of MAGA berets, okay? I don't care. Get them both out, put all the money, all the resources into the grandma killer, and let's stop the Jew killer, okay? That's the bottom line. Because if we don't, New York has a choice, okay? And it's a pretty easy choice. You can pick communism or you can pick capitalism, and you can pick a New York that will actually resemble the city once again and not what this guy wants to turn this thing into. Choose wisely, New York. Let's hope that both of them leave the race. And again, I like Sliwa. I do. Adams, he's all right. I don't like Cuomo. I don't like they're Democrats. I don't like any of them. But I'd much rather have Cuomo in power to block Mamdani, all right? And I don't care who hears that, because it's common sense. Plain and simple.